The X-Men are finally being introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, both through small appearances in alternative universes, such as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and the Marvels, and through characters that have already been defined as mutants, such as Namor and Ms. Marvel. However, the team spent years under the control of Fox, which produced a saga equally loved and criticized by fans. If, on the one hand, the studio hit the nail on the head with projects like X-Men 2, Days of Future Past and Logan, there were also several very interesting ideas that, little by little, were discarded by high-ranking executives. And it's with this in mind that we've put together 10 good concepts for the X-Men films that Fox rejected. Subscribe to the channel and like the video for more content like this. Take the opportunity to suggest the theme for the next video below in the comments. A dive into the origins. One of the most striking scenes in the franchise is the opening of X-Men, later remade into First Class, where we see Magneto's past in a World War II concentration camp. This helps create the villain's personality and present their motives. However, in the film's original script, Magneto was not the only one to have his origins explored. We would have a scene of Cyclops discovering his powers at school, just like in Apocalypse, and Storm causing a stir in a village in Africa. The sets were even assembled so that the scenes could be filmed for the DVD version, but this never happened. Faithful visuals. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of the elements that is most missed in fans' imagination are the classic uniforms. According to concept art released on the first film's DVDs, the characters would originally have outfits similar to those in the comics, or at least more fanciful than the franchise's leather outfits. However, the success of The Matrix made the franchise pursue something more realistic. Later, even Brett Ratner would try to bring the costumes to theaters in The Last Stand, but was denied by the studios. In Wolverine, Immortal, a deleted scene from the film would have featured Wolverine's classic costume, however, it was excluded from the final cut. Fortunately, with the debut of Deadpool and Wolverine, we will finally see the Canadian Wolverine in a costume faithful to the Marvel Comics, and that makes us very excited for what Marvel Studios has in store for the mutant heroes in the future. Keanu Reeves' Gambit. When the first film in the franchise was conceived, several actors were approached to play the main mutants in the series. To give you an idea, Hugh Jackman himself was a last-minute replacement for the role of Wolverine, which would be played by Dougray Scott. Other actors who were considered for roles in the films were Keanu Reeves, who would play Gambit due to the success of The Matrix, Angela Bassett as Storm, Edward Norton as Cyclops, Lucy Liu as Mystique, Sarah Michelle Gellar as Rogue, and the iconic Terrence Stamp as Magneto. The Phoenix Manifests. In the original trilogy, the construction of Dark Phoenix is done gradually, culminating in the final confrontation, which ended up displeasing many fans. However, bigger clues would already be given in X-Men, as Jean would lose control during the UN meeting and end up revealing her powers. This ended up being changed during the filming of the film itself. So, when you watch the first film carefully, you realize that Senator Kelly already knew that Jean was a mutant, and that is precisely why he goes after her when she is genetically modified by Magneto. Featured Danger Room. The Danger Room is one of the most important elements of the X-Men comics. In cinemas, she only appeared for the first time in X-Men, The Last Stand, and later in the final scene of X-Men, Apocalypse, but according to rumors, she would already be introduced in the first film, in the scene in which Wolverine explores the mansion. The sequel was cut due to production costs and time. In X-Men 2, she would also appear, and they even built the set for the recording of the scene, which ended up not being used. And even though it appeared in the third film, it was in a different way than expected, as the mutants would face several Sentinels in a simulation of a dystopian future inspired by Days of Future Past from the comics. X-Men Origins, Wolverine. X-Men Origins, Wolverine is the most criticized film in the entire franchise, bringing questionable decisions such as the adamantium bullet plot or the distorted version of Deadpool. However, early versions of the film would have made everything different. The original script did not include the unnecessary appearances of Emma Frost, Cyclops, Gambit and much less Deadpool. In the climax, Wolverine would face an army of saber-tooth clones, which would justify the villain's appearance in X-Men, as Magneto would have taken one of Victor Creed's clones for himself, and other famous characters would appear, such as Dr. Cornelius and his assistant, Carol Hines. X-Men Origins, Magneto. As much as many don't even imagine, First Class arose from a very interesting idea in the franchise, which was executed in the wrong way. Fox intended to make a series of films, titled X-Men Origins, focused on the past of famous characters, and from there came Wolverine's first solo film. Soon after, the studio intended to make a Magneto solo film, focusing on the villain's childhood and adolescence. The film would have featured Ian McKellen himself in scenes in the present, but it was discarded and ended up giving way to X-Men, First Class, which in turn addresses the entire origin of the team. Days of a future creative limbo. Even before hitting theaters in 2000, the first mutant film went through a great creative limbo that lasted almost a decade. At that time, several scripts were written, including some that featured an invasion of mutants repelled by Sentinels, a plot similar to the classic animation, and another that involved a conspiracy of villains, with Jubilee's parents being participants in the Weapon X project. And these are just the scripts. Since before, several projects have been conceived. James Cameron even came up with a project that would feature Bob Hoskins as Wolverine and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Colossus. X-Force down the drain. Since 2013, Jeff Wadlow, from Kick-Ass 2 and Truth or Dare, had been hired by Fox to develop an X-Force film, and in recent interviews, he explains that his original vision emerged even before the Deadpool solo film. Therefore, we would see the formation of the group from the New Mutants, as happened in the comics of the 90s. The team would be made up of Missile, Beast, Apache, Domino, Dynamite and Cable would be their mentor. Wadlow also wanted Ryan Reynolds to reprise the role of Deadpool as one of the film's antagonists, and this would provide scope for his redemption in theaters. The project spent years in development and was summarily discarded. Discarded New Mutants trilogy. It must be agreed that Fox was not to blame for this case, as the mutant franchise had already passed into the hands of Disney, which took around 2 years to finally release the New Mutants in the cinema. The team's film, directed by Josh Boone, was always designed as a horror feature, but ended up going through several reshoots to tone it down. Josh Boone was interested in producing a horror trilogy of the child X-Men team, with each film delving into a different horror subgenre. The first would be more psychological, with influences from A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, while the second would present Warlock in a cosmic horror, and the third would show a literal hell, with magic and its plot involving limbo. Subscribe to the channel and like the video for more content like this. Take the opportunity to suggest the theme for the next video below in the comments. See you in the next video.